Bag number 55FLH3 along with the head button components. I've already pulled out my grease, some Loctite. I have some other Loctite that I like to use also. First thing I like to do is take apart the grips, because as we know, Align does not pre-build anything. They pre-assemble it so the parts are not misplaced. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this apart. And the purpose of pulling this apart is first off, I need to be able to get into our thrust bearings, which are located inside the grips, and I'm going to apply some grease to this. I'm also going to make sure that our thrust bearings are facing correctly the races. This one is just telling me that it says out, which is perfect. I like to load the back of the thrust bearing with a fair amount of grease, as due to the RPMs it will spin the grease out over time. And our inner is in there. Slip this into place. Perfect. And the next thing I'll do is I'll pull this whole assembly out very easily from the other side and check this here. Leave everything on the shaft. That's in. I've gone ahead and greased the other side of the thrust bearing. I've put a little Loctite on the bolt, and we're going to slip this back through the whole assembly. Our radial bearing is down there. Our thrust washer is back on, so we'll slip the whole spindle back through, set it in place, along with our spacer washer. And what I like to do at this point is put a light amount of grease right on the dampener. Align has put a little in there already, but just to make sure things stay so the spindle doesn't stick at any point. And I'll just put this back through. Got a little hard time. Just use your wrench and push everything through nice and easily. And go ahead and put our spacer back on here. My thrust washer, or actually the thrust bearing and the spacers are in the grip here. I'm going to need to apply a little Loctite to this, along with the fact that this washer is spaced to the outside. And I just like to lay this in here. And I'm going to reassemble the head and the grips. And what I like to do is just firmly apply even pressure to both sides, getting them snug. And that is it on taking apart the head on the 550E and reassembling it with your greased thrust bearings. We will move on to our next step, which will be putting on the post. Alright, so we're going to continue on to assembling the 550E head. Now we're going to apply a little blue Loctite to the grip posts for either grip. And I like to give these a nice snug turn. You're going to need a really good 1.5 Allen driver when you put these on. They do fit a little tight. Also going to install my head button loosely, so we'll have to come back and install the remove this at a later date when we do our DIR setup. Put this up here so I don't misplace anything. I'm not Loctiting it in place. Okay. went ahead and just put the grip bolts through. Okay, so I've gone ahead and finished up the head. Grip bolts are just placed in with the nuts, so they're not lost. Our Jesus bolt is in place. Basically, the head is done at this point. I'm going to put this aside, and we will start on our next segment. So what we're going to do is here, as you can see, the bolts are just loosely threaded on to the Swashplate. So I'm going to remove them, and just with a little bit of glue Loctite on each one of these, reassemble them in one at a time. Just taking my time on these to make sure they're right. You also will need, it looks like a 1.5, because the wall with the smaller stance here, I'm going to use a smaller driver. Our thread size is the same. Now once again, I know I'm going to reassemble loosely components in all of their machines, and this is done to make sure that A, none of the parts are lost, B, the parts are fitting in correctly, because when every kit is packed at the factory, they weigh it to make sure that the part count is right. They have a machine that'll weigh all the whole kit, has a tag on it to prove it, and this is how they control their parts counts, and making sure that every kit leaves with the correct parts, or that it has all the correct parts in the box. Okay. Now I've completed the assembly of the Swashplate. All the balls are removed, Loctited on with blue Loctite. Swashplate is in good shape, feels good. It's a little snug, which is perfect. I'm going to put this aside now. Okay, what I've gone ahead and done is we're going to go to the frame set part of the building, which is just one page over. At this time, I particularly don't like to build my links. I like to leave that for the end, so I can square everything up and just build the links the first time, doing your 90/90. So at this point, I'm going to start assembling some of the frame components. I like to start with the bottom of the frame, where I've already installed one of these pieces, and this is for the bottom plate of the battery tray. This is kind of a part part of the build where it kind of slows down a little bit for you, and you want to take a little time and have your Loctite kind of set up. I just like to put a dab. It's an electric. Still want all our components to be staying on. You're going to use this socket collar screw. It's got a little step on the shoulder. So at this point, I'm going to actually start installing these. These are your boom supports. They're keyed into the frame. Sorry about the angle, but I am right-handed, so I'm trying to tilt everything and give you guys a view of what's going on as I'm building this. But this is it's basically we call it the sub-assembly of our just going back and forth, making sure all the parts kind of line up perfectly, as they always do. It only takes a lot of time and making sure when they build their stuff, Things line up and build pretty easily. Now the other thing is, I don't go absolutely nuts socking these down. I snug all my bolts up. And then after the first flight with the machine, I will go back over and put a wrench on everything to make sure everything is right. I'm just going to set this, actually I'll set this one right here. And we'll start working on the other one. Just for our front. You know, sometimes you go ahead and you'll tighten one down a little too much because everything is such a tight fit between the carbon and the aluminum. You just need to back it off a little bit, and then you can get the piece right in. Alright, so basically the bottom halves have been made up, our lefts and our rights, and we will continue forward installing bearing blocks and the motor mount and some of the other components that are listed right here in our manual. So continue on with this. Turn around and we'll take our motor mount, and basically goes into the front set of the frame right here. We'll use the appropriate bolts that they're showing, another socket collar screw, which basically has a shoulder on it, so it rests inside the carbon frame. It's a shoulder, a little Loctite applied. Now what I'll wind up doing is building, of course I'm putting that in the wrong spot. Now we're putting it in the wrong spot. What I like to do is actually build one half of the frame with other components on it. And then, you know, marriage the two up. It's just something I've done over the years with single stack frame sets. Sometimes you have to put some components on one side, some on the other. When you bring them together, it helps line things up pretty easily. Alright, so this is on there. Just snug this down a little bit because I was on that one side. Bearing blocks are already set up for us with bearings in it and lightly oiled. That's from the manufacturer of the bearings, so we'll just go ahead and install those. Just remember to place the bearings in the right direction. Alright, so we've gone ahead and installed our motor mount. I've gone ahead and pre-installed my top bearing block. Please make sure that the bearing faces up in the installation of this bearing block. And on the lower bearing block, this bearing will face down. So I got both bearing blocks installed, snugged up. I'm just going to give the directions a quick look over, see what else they have us installing. We're actually going to install two frame halves We have a carbon backplate for our ESC that's going to be on the back, along with our landing gear that I'll have to pull out in a minute. But that basically looks like what they want us to do here. We'll join the two halves. So basically overlay them. And at this point, I'm not going to sock anything down too tight on this side. You're going to want to make sure that the frame sets are square. I've never seen a non-square frame set, the way Align builds everything. But it's always good to just eyeball it. And once I put my bottom plate and landing gear on, we'll give that a check. It's very easy. Just going to make sure that the surface that you're on is level. And they just want you to pull a 90 degree. If you have a square or a T or something like that, you put it right off the back. And you just make sure that the frame isn't tweaked at all. But if you're not having any problems assembling it, and not forcing any bolts in, and not having to ream any holes, which I've never had to do, you should be right on track. So, as you see, framing up this helicopter is goes quite fast. So I've gone ahead and did this step a little different, where I put our bottom frame spacers on the frame. Everything lines up really nice. We get our two little button heads right here. Alright. This is a little smaller Allen driver. Locate that right in the center. Still leaving everything a little loose. It's fine. The Loctite, once you snug it up, will still hold. Now we need our landing gear. Alright, so for the landing gear attachment, it's fairly simple. A little Loctite. Make sure your landing gear are facing the right way, forward. And we'll also get set up. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to tighten these all the way down. I'm just going to put them in place. For the time being. Just so everyone knows, I did go ahead and check squareness of the frame set, and it was good. While I was in the middle of pulling out the landing gear and checking on that, so I did go ahead and tighten up those two bolts. So we know we're square. We can square it up nice. Get the landing gear on, it makes it a little easier to set the model up. Get the rest of the gear. Now, I don't use the landing gear tubes, just the rubber grommets on the landing gear. They fly off grass. Here in the East Coast, the guys that fly on pavement and stuff and don't want to wear their skids out, it is advisable that you use your rubber grommets. Taken a few minutes off camera and done some pre-assembling of our 610 cordless digital servos that Align supplies with this 550 version 2 kit. High quality servo. All of our factory pilots fly them. They work really, really well. I installed the rubber grommets along with the brass inserts on all three. I've gone ahead and done the same thing with our 620 digital servo for the tail, along with using the rubber inserts, our grommets, the brass inserts, and I've set it up into the for the tail. At this point, the directions are telling you to go ahead and install your cyclic servos. Looks fairly easy, straightforward. I'm going to leave all the wires just kind of laying in here. Basically what's going to happen here is these are going to lay up. Align provides these spacers, or a block behind the servo for everything to come through and grab. They give you a top plate with their screw setup, and it works very good and very fast to get your servos into your frame. Just go ahead and snug these up until you see a little compression on your grommets. This one you have compressed appropriately. You don't want to go ahead and over compress them, and then you're just going to have the servos too tight, or you're going to bind them up on the legs, stuff like that. So. What I'm doing here is keeping my thumb on the plastic retainer in the back because it wants to rotate down and around. and keeping good firm pressure on the driver, keep it going in, as these are our self-tappers. But sometimes they need a little pressure, going in. The plastic molds are tight, which is good. And then you're going to look for even compression. Keeping the servos firm. You don't want to over tighten the top to the bottom too much. And that kind of gives you an idea of getting your cyclic servos installed into your frame set. I like to keep my wires running down. Install the elevator servo. I've slipped it in through the frame. The servo faces to the rear. I've laid up our carbon plates and our back plate using the hole through the other side of the frame set. We'll guide our stuff in and snug everything up here. If you're watching this video before you do a build on a 550 and you want to make this a little easier on yourself, you could actually install this servo prior to putting the frame sets together. Just got to go and get the appropriate fasteners and stuff, get this servo set up, make sure you're putting it on the correct side. It'll just make things build a little easier for you. It's kind of just a tip. It's something if you wanted to do. If you like following the directions page for page, that's great also. Nothing wrong with that, but as I build different models and stuff through the Align line, I always find easier ways for me to do things, especially the fact that I don't have the world's smallest fingers, and just expediting the build is something nice. So you could put this servo, your elevator servo, in your frame sets prior to joining your halves. This is something to think about. Okay, elevator servo's in. Pitch and cyclic servo, pitch and aileron servo is in. We're going to go ahead and install